Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Gamers video game panel. Once again, I am joined by my friend Tim Smith. Tim, you want to introduce yourself to the people?
Hi everybody, how you doing? It's Timothy Smith.
We're both avid Sony PlayStation supporters. But today we're not here to talk about consoles. We're here to talk about a genre of games. Now, going to the next generation of games, as we know, the first thing that always tends to kick off the next generation cycle tends to be a first-person shooter. Now, we've been getting Call of Duties and even Battlefields and all types of first-person shooters for the duration of our college years, our adult years, and to be fair, it's kind of getting a repetitive cycle. So, my first question, Tim, just to get this started, is how do you feel about the state of first-person shooters as a genre?
As a genre, I feel like it's bare minimum.
Okay.
It's very, very bare minimum. Because especially since most first-person shooters, well, I can say the Call of Duty franchise is yearly since they have 3 studios making it, it's becoming very redundant.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I really log on to my PS4, I still see people play Black Ops 3 and Infinite Warfare, and then mind you, we're on an entirely different one as of now. And then apparently the next one is supposedly might be a reboot of Black Ops, since it's during the Cold War.
Okay.
Or maybe they're probably trying to do what Battlefield did with Battlefield 5 was revisit the genre that, really hit things off for them, like World War II. But it's come to the point where it's just like, what more can you do? They've done so many modern shooters to the point where we're like, well, if we're not getting futuristic, people are not interested. But if you get too futuristic, people are like, oh, I want to go back to the old days type feel. And I just kind of feel like that's the problem with coming out with a yearly installment. Like it's almost like hardware.
Right.
It's like it gets run down very, very easily, very, very fast. And there's not really that much you could really implement that's new compared to the one before.
Got you. For me, I feel like, as we've had a couple conversations off of mic, I'm not a big fan of first-person shooters. I feel like they're, in a lot of ways, a cash-in. And I feel like even when they're not a cash-in, they're just not done very well. From what I've observed from, jumping in and out of first-person shooters, to me, the biggest problem is the lack of innovation, right? Where it's like, kind of speaking to your point about them going too futuristic or them going too far back in the past, like they're kind of afraid to try new things at this point. And I think a lot of it is because the things that they've tried just weren't good, so it's like if you're going to go into the future, it's like, yeah, you're going to the future, but wall running and like levitation boosts is not what I think about futuristic warfare. Like I'm thinking more like advanced weaponry. I'm thinking honestly something Resistance-esque. Like where the weapons are just very unique and very futuristic. Instead of like, no, now you can run on walls and now you have a jetpack, but it's the same automatic rifle you've had since Modern Warfare 2. So that's been one of my things that I've noticed. So my next question was, what do you think needs to happen in order to save the genre, and can it be saved?
It can be saved. For me, the highlight of my first-person shooter career was in the PS3 era when I started to play Killzone and Resistance. The things that gravitated me towards them the most, like, yes, it's a first-person shooter, and, coming from Call of Duty and Battlefield, it was the story.
Okay.
I feel like the story and then, of course, the multiplayer component, they complemented each other. Whereas, like, as of now, you could tell games are more about most first-person shooters are just more about the multiplayer aspects,
right,
than the shooter's story. So I feel this is a good time, especially as we're going through like a transition of video games, is to really like make an impactful story, bro. Give your customers a worthwhile package of content, like in terms of story, gameplay mechanics, maps, because you got to even talk about maps now these days because. Most of these games, the vanilla version are already coming with like 5 to 6 maps, and then you got to pay for the other 30 that's coming later down the line. Whereas back in the day, you started off almost like with 20. So I just find that pretty crazy, man. But yeah, story definitely is what saves it because especially for me, like Killzone 2, Resistance 2 and 3, like those were some amazing stories to me that I really just it really sucked me in. And then when I started to go transition more over into the multiplayer aspect, I enjoyed it a lot.
Mm,
Enjoyed it a lot because it really gives you like a crash course of like how the actual game is played.
mm,
Because one thing I realized is yes, it's basically like playing the story mode, but smarter characters, smarter AI.
mm. Do you feel like there's certain like gameplay elements that might be missing for some
Hmm.
of these? Because like for me, like I feel like how you feel about the stories, how I feel about gameplay mechanics, right? And one of the things I remember when you were telling me like how good Battlefield had gotten, one of the things that caught my eye was the environmental destruction, right? Where it's like on certain maps, you cause enough mayhem, and that building that you were running into to like snipe is coming down. Like that building is going to destroy it. And I
Hmm.
think that's something, especially with this next gen hardware that's supposed to be however more times powerful than the generation hardware we're getting now. Like, I feel like you can't go into this next generation of shooters without those kind of mechanics. You can't. I can't see Call of Duty still doing numbers without having environmental destruction. I can't see it happening without bullets that actually go through walls for once. Like I'm tired of like they ran behind a wall and now all of a sudden like my armor piercing round can't pierce, like the drywall that they're not hiding behind. Like that time is over. Like I want to have something where it's like, give me again environmental destruction, give me a better physics engine. Like why is it where it's like, in these Call of Duty games, it's like it's either whoever has the fastest machine gun or whoever can hit the fastest headshot. That's it. Like if I shoot you in the arm or the leg, there's nothing incorporated that like allows for any kind of metric of damage, right? Where it's like maybe if I shoot you in the chest, you die faster than if I was shooting you in the leg. Whereas now, like in all the games, it's like, well, if I hit you with this level AK, with this type of bullet, it doesn't matter where I shoot you, you're dead. And for the love of God, please put in a cover mechanic. I've grabbed to you about this before. In these first-person shooter games, you can duck. You can run behind things. You can't get cover.
Uh, I mean, all right, but then, all right, see, all right, for example, Killzone had a cover system.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then it's like I said, it goes back to like what's based on the actual story,
Mm-hmm.
I should say. So like if cover mechanics are not in the story, they obviously not gonna put it in the actual multiplayer. The most you're gonna get, oh, you got 3 different versions of proning and sliding while shooting. But like I said, cover mechanics, you just get behind the structure, you duck, and hopefully your head is not exposed.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think that's also the thing that had me leaning towards third-person shooters when I was into shooting games is that they just, yeah, it's an outer body experience, but it felt more real, which is I know
Mhm.
kind of ironic to say for a video game, but it's like, all right, maybe I can't duck down, but I can duck for cover behind something and kind of poke my head out. And yeah, I still might get shot, but that was kind of the appeal. Like that's what made games like even the Uncharted Online so much fun because you could still technically take cover.
Yes.
Which brings me to my next question, right? Is because I feel like first person shooters and even third person shooters are kind of in the same boat where third person shooters have definitely taken a backseat to third person action adventure games. And do you think that, especially with the popularity of Fortnite and things like that, and like how well Battlefront 2 handled both the first person and third person cameras when it came to their game, do you feel like that is a plausible future for the future of first person games?
Yeah, I really do. I definitely see something of that magnitude happening.
Hmm.
Last one check is Apex Legends. Do they have like a third person?
I haven't played it. I'm not too sure.
Okay,
I'm not too
yeah,
sure.
because no, I definitely do see that as a possible future because when you really look at it, it adds a new sense of depth and dimensions to which how you're actually playing,
Hmm.
and I think that's what people really like. People really like variety
Right.
because there's multiple play styles for each person, and especially since now we're doing more of the console slash PC crossovers.
Mm.
Remember, certain people's specs are so different because people's PCs be decked out with this and this and that.
Right. You're playing
versus
at 120 frames per second.
versus my console and things of that nature. So like it adds a sense of leveling to the playground, and then and it goes into the fact like like I said, everybody has a different play style.
Right.
Everybody has a different play style.
Is that the best? You feel like that's the best thing going forward for both genres, though, to just kind of merge into one?
In a
Or
way,
is there still room for
have,
the distinct first person shooter and the distinct third person shooter?
I say like what you can do is it could be like a sub option.
Okay.
Like you have your standard, like this is how the game can be standardly played, like almost like when driving games, like oh you can switch between this, like make it be a sub option.
Okay.
Yes, this is a third person shooter, but if that's not really your play style, if you want something from like a little bit overhead,
Mm-hmm.
here's a go in your settings. Here's a third person camera option.
Right.
Simple.
So I guess Grand Theft Auto 5 might have paved the way to some degree, with their first person camera for GTA 5.
Yeah, yeah, in some shape or form, yes. But then, like I definitely see, you don't have to really do like a massive rehaul. It could just be, it could just be an option.
Okay. My last question then for this topic of first person shooters is, is there any new IP or an IP that you can think of that you feel would kind of re-spark the interest in that genre? Like watching the Xbox Series X like initial announcement, that survival extinction game where essentially it's you and your team versus a bunch of dinosaur looking creatures. I'm like, that looked interesting, but is new IPs the way to kind of like re-spark that like interest in first person shooters?
To be honest, yes, because especially after like this PS4, Xbox X era, whatever that system was called, I do feel now it is the time to really invest into new IPs. Like I'm tired of remakes, I'm tired of remasters, and then to be honest, just certain series just needs to just die out. Like I get it, we have all of these anniversary celebrations, this and that and the third. But all right, if you have hit the pinnacle of this series, it's time to just let it go. Let it go. Start over something new. Get some new character arts. Get like just design some new characters. And look at the like things how you did for your stories back in the day and how you could do them better now. So like for that dinosaur game, especially, I really liked it because it kind of reminded me of like Turok,
right?
A splash of like Left 4 Dead type feel.
It kind of reminds me of the Jurassic Park shooters you see at the arcade, where it's like you kind of sit down and just.
Yes, and then the reason, and then the Raptors, they didn't feel like just like a mindless horde of zombies just coming at you. It's like attack hunters like wolves, like they're just like, oh, there's 4 from this coming in, or they're trying to like come at you from this end.
Right,
so like,
right.
There's a sense of realism to it, and then I like how it was only 3 people. So I do feel like adding like an odd number adds like a sense of like. And it also reminded me of like Evolve as well. They might have like a super dinosaur, like a T-Rex or a Spinosaurus or what are those type feel.
Right.
But I do feel like the graphics and just the dynamic gameplay alone that's what just brings people back into these type of genres.
Okay. I agree. I think, again, like it would take a lot for me to kind of want to get back into the first person genre. But I do think new IPs is the way to go. Like I don't think at this point there's anything that, again, the Call of Duty franchise could do to reel me back in. Like it's clear they've reached their peak. They're borrowing ideas from Fortnite at this point. It's not pretty, at this point. You're just like, okay, so I'm hoping for at least some kind of new IP that isn't just, like it's conceptual, right? So like one of the things that I never really gravitated towards, but I know a lot of people love, was Mirror's Edge, right? Where it's this like parkour first person game, right? You liked it. One of my friends like loves that game. I'm just like, sure, but like if that had those elements like attached to like a really strong first person shooter, I might pick it up. Like I might pick it up. I might be willing to like dive back into that genre again. But
the thing about that Edge was a first person adventure. First person adventure, like yes, the graphics, like they used a lot of color marketing because like it was very very colorful. Everything was just like in dynamic coloring, and it was about like how it's like an obstacle course. You know, you got these parkour like skills, like, so how can you complete this mission in the most stylish manner
Right.
possible?
Mm.
And that's what
mechanic.
that's what I loved about it. That's what it tested my ability. I remember one day I was just playing the old one before it got remade in some form or way. All of a sudden I just unlocked some silver trophy out of nowhere. I was like, bro, what did I just do?
Mm.
And I look back, oh, you did this flip with a stop touchdown. I was like, okay. Okay. But it really, that's what really great, like drew me back in, because like as we get like, you know, older, and then especially like, you know, with the new sets of systems coming out now, I just want like a sense of innovation to it. Like, for example, like the new God of War, I love that feel. Like it felt like an entirely different Kratos from like the trilogy and the expanded games that I played before. Just like, oh, they added this little kid. It's gonna be trying to be like The Last of Us now. Like technically, bro, it wasn't.
Right. At all.
It wasn't at all. The RPG mechanics that they added, like you could change your armor, and then they even had side quests, bro. When was the last time you see Kratos went on a side quest, bro?
Right. No,
so I love that factor. So that's what I said. Like, it's just that now is the time for real innovation and to really stand out, to really like, you know, experiment a little bit.
Okay, I agree. I think, and I you know, maybe it's the Sony bias in me, but like I feel like especially for Xbox, like there's no better time for them to roll the dice in right now. You know, I think they spent this past generation like really exhausting the real interest in Halo, right? The real interest in Gears of War. You know, I think we don't need another one of those anytime soon, or a reboot or anything like that. Like I think now's the time is to roll the dice on a new IP. I think if Sony's smart, even though they don't need to, because they're essentially running the action adventure genre right now, still roll the dice on a new IP. Like give us, or bring back an existing IP that we thought you forgot about. Like I would love a Heavenly Sword too. Love a Heavenly Sword.
There was an article that released today that Jack might actually begin like a remake.
Really?
How they did for Ratchet and Clank. So, and they said that might also be like a launch title. So we're just waiting to see confirmation from that, because I know a lot of friends of mine have been like looking forward to like a Jack 4. But I think when you really look at it, that's probably like the best way to go is just to remake it, because it looked like even after like Sly Cooper, they had that fourth one made by a different studio, but then there has not been no updates about that story whatsoever. So I kind of just feel like it just got threw out. So I'm just gonna say, well, hey, we could just remake the Sony All Stars.
That one's on top of for another time, because I hated that game so much. I hated that game.
Hey.
Well, anyway, so this is our conversation for first-person shooters for this week. Once again, if you guys like the video and you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment, a thumbs up, a thumbs down. Any kind of feedback is appreciated. Tim, if you want to leave any social media handles for them to follow you on.
Oh, yes. You can follow me at Michael Smith, MYKALE Smith.
Okay. And same for me. All my handles are the same across the board. It's Antonius the Gamer. So if you found this YouTube channel, it's the same thing on Instagram. It's the same thing on Twitter. Make sure, again, to like and subscribe. Thank you guys for taking the time to tune in.